Hello everyone, this is the Math 0028 1.3U try problems. So let's look at letter A. This whole section was about solving equations with fractions, and the directions say solve the equations by clearing fractions first. So the first thing you have to do is find the least common denominator. So on letter A we've got denominators of 3 and 4. So our least common denominator, I gotta remember to get the pen. The least common denominator is 12 for 3 and 4. So you're going to put 12 over 1 and you're going to multiply it by every single term in the equation. That includes the x right here at the beginning. So you can put x over 1 and then bring down the sign plus put the common denominator 12 over 1 times 2/3 and then your equal sign and 12 over 1 times 3/4. Okay, so the first step is messy and ugly, but after the first step, everything's going to cancel and it's going to be beautiful. So, on the first fraction here, 12 times x is just 12x. Bring down your plus sign. You can cancel 3 and 12 by 3. That's going to leave 1 and 4. So 4 times 2 up there on top would be 8. Don't worry about the ones on the bottom. If it's not ones, then you should worry. But don't write 8 over 1, just write 8. And then equals, here we can cancel by 4. That would leave 1 and 3. And 3 times 3 would be 9. Now, look at that wonderful equation compared to the garbage we started with. So much nicer. That's the whole idea. So now we're going to solve just like normal. We're going to get rid of the 8 first. Subtract 8. So the 12x comes down, the 8's are gone, and it equals 1. And then divide by 12, divide by 12 on both sides, and x equals 1/12. Should you freak out over getting a fraction? No. It might make you think a little weird about it, but, go back and check your work. And if your work looks okay, say a prayer, move on. Okay? Let's look at B. So we have denominators of 21 and 3. So the least common denominator here is going to be 21 because they both go into 21. A lot of people think 3. 3 is a common factor, not a common denominator. They have to go into the denominator, and 21 would not go into 3, so that's why it can't be 3. All right, so we're going to put 21 over 1, and I'm going to draw a line here so we can keep them separate, times negative 1 over 21. That's that first term. Bring down your equal sign. 21 over 1. And make sure you have m over 1. Got to keep that multiplied also. Plus 21 over 1 times 2/3. Barely going to fit there. All right, so back on the left over here, the 21s are going to cancel to just 1s. So you have 1 times negative 1 is going to be negative 1. Equals 21 times m is going to be 21m. Bring down your plus sign. Here we can cancel 3 and 21 would leave 1 and 7. So 7 times 2 is 14. Now you need to move the 14 because we want to get the 21m by itself. So I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. And that's going to give me negative 15 because you add and keep the sign equals 21m. And now remember, you're trying to get the m by itself. So divide by 21 on both sides. The 21s are gone. Over here, since the top number's smaller, it's going to be a fraction. But you want to see if you can reduce it. 15 and 21 have a common factor of 3. So if I divide the top and bottom by 3, it's going to be a negative because there's only one negative sign there. And it would be 5 over 7. All right, let's see what's next. So here we have C, excuse me, and we have negative 2/5 m equals negative 6/7. Now we want to clear the fractions. So your denominators are 5 and 7. You can use 35. That would be a common denominator. And it's also the least common denominator. Here's a trick. If you can't figure out the common denominator just by looking at the 2 or 3, however many denominators you have, you can always multiply the denominators together. And it may be a bigger number. It may not be the least common denominator, but it will be a common denominator and it will work. You may just have to do more reducing at the end of your answer. That's all. So if you're, excuse me, if you're not seeing the common denominator right off the bat, you can always multiply your denominators together and that will work. Okay? So we're going to put 35 over 1 and we're going to multiply it by the negative 2/5 m and then equals 35 over 1 times negative 6 over 7. All right, so over here on the left, I can cancel by 5. That goes 5 goes into 5 once and into 35 7 times. So I have 7 times negative 2 would be negative 14m. Don't forget the variable. So many people lose the variable and then they don't have anything to solve for. And on the right hand side, one thing I didn't do over here on the left that I should have is I should have figured out my sign first. What's a positive times a negative? It's going to be a negative. So that way, if you cancel and you've got negatives in there and you're not sure what's going, does it leave a positive? Does it leave a negative? If you figure out the sign first, it's easier. Okay, so it's like that bad pickup line. Hey, baby, what's your sign? Okay, don't use that. You'll get punched. So anyway, we're going to cancel by 7 over here, and that's going to leave a 1 and a 5. And we already know it's going to be a negative, but double checking, 5 times negative 6 is going to be negative 30. And now divide by negative 14, excuse me, and the 14s cancel, the negative 14s cancel, the m comes down. Now, 2 negatives on a fraction, remember that's a positive, and you want to look and see what can go into both 30 and 14. Well, if I divide by 2, they're both even. You can always reduce by a 2 when they're even. That's going to give you 15 over 7, and that would be it. And leave your answers as an improper fraction. That's fine. Okay? All right, let's look at letter D here. So we have 5 and 15. Well, 15, they'll both go into 15. So our least common denominator is 15. So I'm going to put 15 over 1 times negative 3/5 and equals 15 over 1 times 2 over 15x. Now you will notice that I usually put, they have the negative sign out front. I usually put it up in the numerator just so I don't lose it. And that's that's where you use it anyway. So on this left side, a positive times a negative, we're going to have a negative, okay? And we're going to cancel the 5 by 5. 5 will go into 5 once and into 15 3 times. 3 times negative 3 gives me negative 9. Over here on the right, the 15s cancel out completely to just 1s. So we have 1 times 2 would be 2x, okay? And then divide by 2 to get the x by itself. So we have x equals negative 9 over 2. All right? On we go. Letter E. So solve the equations by clearing the fractions first. So look at the 4 and the 11. The common denominator there is going to be 44. So that's what we're going to multiply both sides by. 44 over 1. Sorry, I have a froggy throat. Sorry about that. Times x minus 5 all over 4. And then we're going to put 44 over 1 on the other side. Now, to tell you the truth, if I was doing, that's over 11, this problem and the directions did not say clear fractions first. These are actually proportions. I would just cross multiply. It's a lot easier. But since it said to clear the fractions first, we're going to do it the way they said to. So whatever. Okay. So on this first fraction over here on the left, I can divide and cancel by 4. That's going to leave 1 and 11. So here's where you have to be careful. You're going to have 11 times x minus 5. That has to stay in parentheses or your answer is going to be all messed up and wrong. Over on the right hand side, if I divide by 11, that leaves 1 and 4. So I have 4 times 5x minus 1. Now look at what we have. If we had cross multiplied at the very beginning, we would get exactly what we just got and you wouldn't have to go through all that mess. But you know, you have to make sure that you do know how to clear fractions, whether it's a proportion or not. So now our next step, we need to get rid of the parentheses. We need to distribute. So I'm going to distribute the 11 and the 4. So that's going to give me 11x minus 55, right? 11 times 5 equals 4 times 5 would be 20x minus 4, because we did 4 times 1. Now, move your variables to the left. So I'm going to subtract 20x from both sides. I have a hard time subtracting upside down. That should be negative 9. Okay, x minus 55 equals negative 4. Okay, now we need to add 55, get rid of that constant, and we have negative 9x, right, would equal negative 4 plus 55. You have to subtract there. That's going to be 51. This is going to be an ugly answer. Divide by negative 9 on both sides, and you get a lovely fraction, negative 51 over 9. Now, would you want to check that? Me either. So, if you have time to check that answer, you need to get some friends. Join Facebook. I don't know what to tell you. All right, let's look at letter F. 3 and 5. The common denominator would be 15. Okay, so we're going to put 15 over 1 times x minus 6 over 3, and then equals 15 over 1 times x over 5. All right, so I can cancel by 3 over here on the left. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 15 5 times. So I have 5 times x minus 6, and then equals, if we cancel by 5 over here, we're going to get 1 and 3 equals 3x. So our next step is to distribute. So distribute the 5. You're going to have 5x minus 30 equals 3x. Now, this is a little bit different, this equation. Look at what you have. You have variables on both sides, but on the right-hand side, all I have is a variable term. So it's going to be less steps if instead of moving the 3x to the left, if I move the 5x to the right. So don't freak out. I know I've been saying since the beginning, oh my gosh, move the variables to the left, same thing. But when there's only a variable term by itself on the right, it's easier to move the variable terms to the right. Okay, it's a lot less steps and simpler to solve. So the 5x's are going to cancel. I bring down negative 30 equals 3 minus 5 would be negative 2x. Okay, then divide by negative 2. So your variable is just going to be on the other side. Remain calm. It's fine. Okay, the 2's cancel and x is going to equal positive 15. On we go. Letter G. So we're looking at denominators of 8, 3, and 12. Okay, so if you start with the biggest denominator, 12, and say, okay, well, 8 doesn't go into 12, so we can't use 12. But what's 12 times 2? 24. 8 and 3 both go into 24. So there is our common denominator right there, 24. Okay, so we're going to put 24 over 1 times every single term all the way through. And I really recommend that you write it all out like this so that you can see what the heck you're doing. Some people like to just write it once, and I don't know, I think that's harder. So 24 over 1 times 5 over 12. Because after the first step, it gets a lot nicer. All right, on this first set of fractions, we can divide and cancel by 8. It's going to leave 1 and 3. Because 24 divided by 8 is 3. So we have 3 times 3 would be 9x. Bring down your plus sign. Here we can cancel by 3, and that's going to leave 8 times 2 would be 16. And over here, we can divide and cancel by 12. 12 will go into 24 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. That is a thing of beauty compared to that garbage we started with. So now we're going to subtract 16. And 9x comes down, and it equals negative 6. And then divide by 9, and the 9's cancel. And here we're going to get a fraction because the 6 is smaller, and I can reduce the top and bottom by 3, so I'm going to end up with negative 2/3. Not too bad. All right, letter H. we've got 3 and 4 and 2 for our denominators. Well, 3 and 4, those both go into 12, and so does 2. So there is your common denominator, 12. So I'm going to multiply every term, just like we've been doing, by 12 over 1. So times 2/3, and then 12 over 1 times 3/4. Now this part's kind of weird. We've just been bringing down the signs, which is what I'm still going to do. I'm just going to bring a minus sign down and still put the common denominator first and the term second. Do not put a minus sign here and a negative sign on the 1/2. That's wrong. You just put the sign, just bring it down in the middle. It's so much easier. Okay? So cancel by 3 over here, and that's going to leave 4 times 2 would be 8 equals, cancel by 4, that's going to leave 1 and 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. Bring down that minus sign, and here we can cancel by 2, leaves 1 and 6. So we have minus 6y. Okay? Now, get the 6y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And 8 minus 9 is negative 1. These 9's are gone. Equals negative 6y. Then divide by negative 6 on both sides. So we get y. Now be careful here. Remember, 2 negatives on a fraction ends up being a positive. So you'd have 1/6. All right, letter I. We have two denominators here, 6 and 3. Well, they both go into 6. So there is our common denominator is 6. So we're going to put 6 over 1, and make sure you multiply it by that p, because that's part of the equation. A lot of people skip right over that and then everything's wrong. So times p over 1 minus 6 over 1 times p over 6, all right, equals 6 over 1 times p over 3, and then plus, you also have to multiply this too. 6 over 1 times 2 over 1. All right. Every single term gets multiplied by the common denominator. So back over here on the left, that doesn't look like a 6. That's horrible. 6p is going to be 6p. Bring down the minus sign. Here the 6's cancel each other out by 6 would just leave p, and then equals. Here the 3 and the 6 cancel, and that leaves 1 and 2. So we get 2p plus 6 times 2 would be 12. So that's what we're looking at so far. Now look at the left-hand side. Those are like terms. Okay, you have 6p minus p. That's like a 1 there. So 6 minus 1 would be 5p equals 2p plus 12. So I need to get my variables on the same side. I'm going to subtract 2p, move it to the left, and 5p minus 2p is 3p. 2p's are gone, equals 12. Then last step, divide by 3, and comes out to a nice answer. P equals 4. All right, on we go to J. So look at your denominators, 4, 12, 2, and 6. They all go into 12, right? 4 goes into 12, so does 2, so does 6. So that is our common denominator, is 12. So here we go, 12 over 1 times w over 4 plus 12 over 1 times 11 over 12. Bring down your equal sign. 12 over 1 times 1/2. Bring down the minus sign. And then do 12 over 1 times w over 6. All right, all those fractions. So on the first fraction, we're going to cancel by 4. It's going to leave 1 and 3. So we have 3w comes down. Bring down that plus sign. The second one you can cancel by 12. So 1 times 11 is 11. And then here we can cancel on the other side by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So we have 6. Just bring down that minus sign and cancel by 6 over here, and we're going to get 2w. All right, so I need to move my variables to the left because they're on opposite sides. So I'm going to add 2w to both sides. 2w. So 5w plus 11 equals 6. Those two w's are gone. Now, get the constants to the right, so I'm going to subtract 11. And so 5w comes down, and 6 minus 11 gives me negative 5. Then divide by 5 on both sides, so w equals negative 1. It's another nice answer. Not bad at all. Alright, k, good grief, they just keep getting longer. So 5 and 10, those both go into 10, but 4 doesn't. But 5 and 4 both go into 20, and so does 10. So there is our common denominators. Now, one thing you should notice, some people think, oh, this is a proportion. It is not, because there's too many terms. A proportion is only one fraction equal to just another fraction, and that is not in this format. So you have to use the common denominator thing. All right, so we're going to have 20 over 1 times 4x over 5, then plus, bring that sign down, 20 over 1 times 3x minus 2 over 10, and then equals 20 over 1 times x plus 6 over 4. All right, here we go. Cancel by 5. That's going to leave 1 and 4. So we have 4 times 4 is 16x. Bring down that plus sign. Here 10 goes into both of those, so divide by 10, you get 1 and 2. Now be careful, you're going to have 2 times 3x minus 2. So how do you know when to keep the parentheses and when not? Look at the first term. There was only one term with the 4x, so I didn't need parentheses. I could just multiply. But if you have two terms, like 3x minus 2, you have to keep those in parentheses because you're going to distribute. Okay, so just be careful about that. All right, equals, here divide by 4, so it leaves 1 and 5. So again, bring down the x plus 6 in parentheses. Okay, no fractions, yay. Next step, get rid of the parentheses. So I'm going to distribute the 2 and the 5 in this step. So that's going to give me 6x, and 2 times negative 2 would be negative 4, equals 5x plus 30. We did 5 times 6. Okay, look at the left side. I've got x's there on the same side of the equal sign. So I'm going to combine those. 16 plus 6 is 22x minus 4 equals 5x plus 30. Now we want to start moving our variables to the same side of the equal sign. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides, and that gives me 17x minus 4 equals 30. Okay? Then add 4, get rid of the constant. Okay, and 17x comes down, and it equals 34. Now people think, ooh, this is gross, but if you divide by 17, it goes evenly. X equals 2. Nice, neat little answer. All right, let's look at L. Ugh, what the L? That's awful looking. All right, I think this is the last one, right? Huh, yes it is. I'm so excited. Where's the other arrow? Here we go back. Okay. Now, here's the difference on this one. This one's gross because there's fractions with parentheses. So you're going to have to get rid of both. You're going to have to get rid of the fractions and the parentheses. And I think it's easier to get rid of the fractions first because nobody wants to distribute 3/5. That's gross. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the two denominators, the 5 and the 3. The common denominator is going to be 15. Now, what you need to see is on the left, this whole thing, 3/5 2x plus 7, that's all one term. So you only put the common denominator 15 there one time. And then you're also going to put the 15 by the 3, by that negative 3. And then over here on the right, 1/3 5x minus 2, that's all one term. You got to say it real fast. 1/3 5x minus 2. I sound like an idiot. All right, so you have to put 15 over 1 there just one time. Okay, so some people try and put it everywhere, and that's wrong. So we're going to have, and this first step is going to be nasty, 15 over 1, that's a 15, times 3/5 2x plus 7. Okay, that's all one big lovely term. Bring down the minus sign. and you're going to do 15 over 1 times 3 over 1, because even though that's not a fraction, it's part of the equation, so it's going to get multiplied. All right, and then equals, over here on the right, 15 over 1 times 1/35x minus 2, because it's all one big term. All right, now what's going to happen is the fractions are going to cancel before you even get to the parentheses. That's the idea, because you don't want to distribute a fraction. So over here on the left, I can cancel by 5, and that's going to leave 3. So what we have is 3 times 3 is 9 times 2x plus 7. That's much easier to distribute than 3/5 that we started with, okay? Then bring down your minus sign. 15 times 3 is 45. And then equals, over here, cancel the fractions before the parentheses. If you divide by 3, you're going to get 5. So we have 5 times 5x minus 2. So with the choices there between getting rid of a fraction or a parentheses, always get rid of the fractions first. So much easier. So now we distribute. So we're going to have 9 times 2 is 18x plus 9 times 7 is 63 minus 45, and then distribute the 5. That's going to be 25x minus 10. Now, like terms on the left, I've got some constants there. What the heck is that? 13 minus 5 is 8. 18, right? 63 minus 45, yes, is 18. Equals 25x minus 10. Now, same steps. Move your variables to the left. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 25x. Okay, 18 minus 25 is negative 7x. Okay, is that right? 15, yeah. Having a brain fart. Plus 18 equals negative 10. Now get rid of the 18, subtract 18. So negative 7x comes down, and negative 10 and negative 18 is negative 28. Divide by negative 7, well, at least it comes out nice, and x equals 4. And that is it for your 1.3 U tries. Have fun.